So we started meeting with a whole bunch of community-based organizations, um, community, like basically anyone that does work with child safety or families, to figure out what's their perspective. Um, what's their perspective when it comes to how they feel about their children. I mean, a couple different things. Just as we've been talking about focus groups and exploring these different topics, we've been hearing things from all over the place. So we decided to put a parent group together to figure out, okay, what are some things that you want to learn about your children's safety? Some of the topics that we talked about was mental health. That was a big topic, and how is this affecting our children and our youth? Another thing that we talked about was abuse, domestic abuse. We talked about drugs, still talking about it, talked about gun violence. Um, and I think the thing that's been the most profound thing for me is this concept of paternalism, and how basically working with youth, how they view power structures. So how do they view school systems? How do they view governments? How do they view their parents? And do they feel like they have a voice when it comes to this issue of child safety? How important is their voice? So when it comes to the difficulties of it, I mean, there's large ranges of it. I think one thing I've been super grateful for is the fact that there are people that want to talk about it. There are people in the community that are making differences. One of the things that came to mind or came to our observation was that a lot of the communities a lot of the people in the communities don't know all the services that are available to them. They kind of have all these different services that are all over the place, but they don't know a central place of where to go to get everything that they need. One of the things that we used to say all the time is it feels like we feel like in the religious world, we felt like there's a church on every corner. It's like corner store church. And it feels like, which one do we go to? There's so many different things. Where do we go? And I think when it comes to child safety, I think there's so many things to talk about with it. Another thing that we talked about, or another thing that popped up too, is that there's a lot of government systems that people might not trust because there's some negative connotations that come with it, like a DCF. And when a lot of people think about DCF, what comes to mind is probably separating families. And then some people don't want to deal with that. So some people are afraid to speak up because they're afraid that something might happen with their child. Or I know a lot of things that we face within our culture is, oh, that's not my business. Don't say nothing because that's not my business. Where it felt like, at least when we were doing focus groups back in the day, it felt like, no, this is my business. That neighbor is not my kid, but they're still my neighbor. This is still my community. And one of the things that was popping up is it feels like there's a lot more mind your business, stay in your lane, don't focus on this. Let me just make sure I'm taking care of my own thing. So that's another thing that's been popping up when it comes to some of the difficulties, at least the things that we're seeing. So we're still getting a lot of data. There's people that want to do focus groups so we can find more information about how the community feels about these topics. It's great. We're still going to analyze this data to figure out what are some things and trends that we're seeing. But yeah, I think one of the things that I've enjoyed is that we've worked with the Hartford Communities That Care with Andrew Woods and and then also the Youth Academy with Eddie Brown. And we did a focus group with them, and it was incredible. One of the things that these youth were talking about was they were talking about things like intergenerational trauma, which I'm like, for these kids, for these 15, 16, 17-year-old young men and women to be using these terminology it's crazy. So they're getting exposed to a lot more. And intergenerational trauma it's basically the concept of the parents have trauma and the parents pass their trauma on to their kids because of the trauma that they have dealt with. And I don't know about you, but as a youth, like as a teenager, I didn't know how to answer these questions. I couldn't find even words for this. So the fact that these kids have these tools right now and they know these words to address their emotions have been inspiring, to be honest. So I'm excited to hear more from the youth to figure out, okay, what are some things that y'all see? Because there's definitely things that y'all are seeing. Um, so yeah, I'm sorry, I'm talking a mile a minute, but yeah.
No, but I think it's important to hear what you have to say. Do you work with younger groups as well, besides the teenage group? Like, do you go
Yeah.
into the schools and interact with the younger kids who are having problems?
No, so I don't work directly with any kids. So what I've been doing is I have been organizing this project to be in contact with community-based organizations. So like Eddie Brown, who's with HCTC, he's the person that I've been in contact with that who deals with the kids directly. He works in
Right.
the schools and deals with them outside of the schools as well. So he's the person that's more of the front line. I'm really the person that's organizing this project, working with the communities, gathering the data, giving it to people that know how to analyze the data and try to bring it back to the communities that we're working with so they know this information that honestly is their information that they've never had before.
And so that information is used to develop new programs, or what is the data used for, basically?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things that we're going to be talking to is we're going to present the data to these community-based organizations so they could come up with some recommendations. So they can figure out, okay, what do we want to use this data for? Maybe we want to create new programs. Maybe we're realizing that there's too many programs out there and we need to figure out how to consolidate or communicate better with each other. That's one of the things that we've been hearing from parents and from teenagers consistently is like, there's a lot of programs out there and there's a lot of programs that get funded or a lot of programs where their money dries up and they disappear. So that's one of the things we want to talk about too is like, okay, how do we want to use this data and what do we want to use this data for? But it is going to be made for recommendations. We don't know what those recommendations are going to be right now. I think a part of that's a little scary because it's like, okay, where are we going with this? But a part of that I love because it feels like we're giving communities and parents the power to say, like, where do we want to go with this? So they can decide what actions they want to take and where they want to go. Which is another thing we've been talking about too, is this concept that a lot of decisions are made for parents and teenagers and without their contribution, without their thoughts on it, like decisions are made for them. So we've been talking about that when it comes to parent power as well.
Do you find that a lot of the issues center around mental health? We talked about that a little earlier. You said something about the mental health aspect of our youth.
Yeah, I mean, so for me personally, yes. I think when we've talked about that, one of the questions we have for our focus group, so we actually use parents to develop the questions for our focus groups. And for our focus groups, we gather about 5 to 10 people, and we ask them questions about child safety to figure out what their responses are. One of the questions that we asked is actually, we asked if we did away with poverty and discrimination, would that address child safety issues? Which was a great question. But I think one of the things that always comes from that too is, so what happens if we eliminate mental health? And that, for at least from the comments that we've heard, that has a major impact on the not only just the teens and the preteens and the kids, but also the parents as well. And sometimes what we're noticing is that a lot of trauma can be caused from the stuff that's happening in their homes. And
Right.
a lot of traumas can be caused from the parents dealing with stuff that's outside of their homes. So it feels like almost a funnel of things are happening. And it's so funny. We talked about discrimination. And if someone feels discriminated against in the house, or they feel like they're having or dealing with stress because of poverty in their house, of course that's going to affect the team. Of course that's going to affect their mentality. Of course, if you're in a place where you're like, I don't know what to do, I'm stressed out all the time, I feel depressed because I can't take care of my family. Of course, teens are going to feel that, and the youth is going to feel that, and they're going to take that on. One of the things we talked about in one of our groups is we had one parent that said like, essentially they said, my teen told me that, oh, we have a maid and we have a caretaker, but we don't have a mom. We have a funder, basically, who pays for all of our stuff. a maid to make sure the house is clean, but we don't have a mom because she was essentially working 2 to 3 jobs. And we're talking about like that affects the kid, that affects their mentality, because they feel like something's lacking, or they don't feel loved, or they might feel depressed because of that. And then that affects the youth. And I mean, we just saw was it last month or 2 months ago where there was that drug incident at was it
Yeah. Science
Science
Medical
Academy?
Academy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you talk about like these are teens that are taking like heavy drug use. That is it's insane. And yeah, I think stress has a lot to deal with it, and I think COVID has a lot to deal with it too, because I think COVID has really allowed us to stop and think about, okay, how do we actually feel about these things? Because we kept going with life, but now we have some time to reflect on like what's actually going on and how do I feel about it.
Do you experience or see a lot of bullying taking place within that population?
So I haven't seen bullying taking place directly. So I could speak to I can speak to my experience working as a youth director for my church. So I had a group of about 40 to 50 teenagers, and there is some bullying, especially when it comes to like cyber, and it doesn't feel like direct bullying in the sense of, I think bullying back in the day for me felt very, it's like you get beat up or you're getting picked on. And
Right.
today it's cyberbullying. It feels like a whole nother level. Yeah. So from what I'm seeing, it feels like more pressure than anything to be something or to present something,
Or to fit
more
in.
than what it was back in the day. Yeah. Because image was always a thing, right? The way you dress, how you look, but now it's how you look in person and how you look online. It's it's been magnified. So when you talk about this, it's like, oh, like how you dressing like that. The other thing is, it's so funny. My little brother is 17 years old, and I remember one time, I think it was 2 years ago, he was wearing Fila's, the shoes,
Yeah.
and I told him if I would have wore that, it would have been over. Like everyone would have clowned me. It would have been bad. Like I would have came home in my feelings. And it's so crazy that it feels like in some ways there's a lot more bullying, but in other ways it feels like there's a lot more acceptance in the sense of, oh, you can do this. And it's actually weird if you start bullying someone in some ways. So I've seen a balance of both, where virtual bullying feels like on a rise, but then also you get called out and there's more accountability too.
Yeah. So you see a lot of individuality going on with kids and
Yes, more.
expressing their own concerns and their own like favorites and personalities and things.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more space to be different. There's a lot more space because I think a lot more people have been glorified because of their differences. Like that has taken a different toll. So now it feels like it's so funny because um I was talking to a lot of the youth that I was working with. They had a huge goal to get into college. Um, and it was almost full-time jobs what they were doing to make sure they could get into college, like all the extracurricular activities that they were doing to make sure that they can get into this place. It just feels like there's freedom to express yourself, but there's also this this strong pressure to make sure that you stand out in your individuality. And when you have that strong pressure, it creates, or that strong like desire, it creates like a bigger fall or a bigger dip in some ways. And I think that's also why we see the number of like cases when it comes to depression also on the rise. So yeah, so it's a mixture. It feels like individuality. Yeah, you can be yourself, but as you're being yourself, be the best version of yourself that you can be, so you can get as many views or likes or et cetera as you can.
Now, do you deal with a lot of sexual orientation issues within
So
the group?
so it's actually interesting. So for and this was actually not a group for teens that we did, but we have done a focus group that had a group of transgendered men and transgendered women. We did one for both, and one of the things that we've also realized uh, was that discrimination was big. Like there was this one point And this was great because it tied in with my experience in the religious community as well. There's one experience where we talked about church uh, with people that fit into the that fit into sexual orientation, that pool, and and they started crying immediately. Like when you brought up the concept of church, it was triggering for them because it felt like a place where they weren't accepted. And it brings them back. I remember talking to another group where where um, where people were abused or neglected from parents or family members or etc. And that's like there was this one group where it was addressed where people were hurt specifically because of their sexual orientation. And again, that's directly dealing with child safety. Because now you feel like if I am myself, I'm going to get hurt, right? And then what kind of effect does that have on someone mentally? Um, and that definitely affects safety, mental safety, physical safety, emotional safety. Um, so yeah, so we've worked with that group. We've worked with people in that group. Um, yeah, and the stuff that we've asked. I mean, we've asked hard questions. Trying to make sure I don't dive into directly what people said. I'm trying to give a generalization of it. Um, but it was heart wrenching to hear some of the stuff that was going on. It was hard.
Now, does St. Francis provide any resources to address those sorts of issues and problems and things?
Yeah. So actually, one of the things that we're doing as well. So because one of the things as we're doing the focus groups, we tell people like this information is triggering. This information might cause people to feel something or bring them back to a place that was very difficult for them to get through. So one of the things that we do in each group is to make sure that there's a staff person with the organization that could be there for emotional support. We let them know that we can stop this at any point. We can stop the focus group at any point to make sure that your safety comes first. The other thing that we do is we have a department within Trinity called the Family Advocacy Center, and they do FETI interviews. They do interviews with people that have experienced death or have experienced abuse or have had traumatic experiences in general. And we work directly with them to partner with these parents or these teens, these young folks that are that have been impacted, so they can get the help they need. So the Family Advocacy Center can deal with it directly, and they have other services that they give to them as well. But the FAC, that's what we call it. That's one of our biggest resources for people that are going through difficult times.
Are those services located in the hospital or off-site, or
It's located in the hospital.
In the hospital?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yep.
make
The
sure that
Family
people can
Advocacy
get
Center
access.
is located in the hospital. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And as well as the fact that you're dealing with families, individuals, and things of that nature, but just you don't have a relation. You have a relationship with the schools at all, though.
So one of the things that we're doing for, and I'll talk a little bit about a parent group too. So we pulled together a group of parents because one of the things that we realized when we were getting information or getting statistics was a lot of community members don't know about the statistics of how many kids are dying from things like SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome,
Right.
dying in their sleep. So a lot of people don't know these statistics, right? So we gathered parents so we can get different agencies and different organizations to talk to parents about these statistics, and then the parents are then developing a community or developing a curriculum or educational guide so they can then share it with their own community so that it's parents talking to parents. So one of the things that we've been doing is making sure we're inviting the Hartford Public Schools to those conversations so that we can have school representation in there. I think one of the things that the parents have communicated is that the schools are one of the biggest places to get information out. I know one of the things that New Haven is doing is they're trying to introduce curriculum about gun violence into their school systems. Like they're trying to make sure that kids know about this. Because if it's a Second Amendment, if it's something that's supposed to be so ingrained into our country, why don't we have education about this in our school systems to make sure that guns aren't being glorified, or guns aren't being only used for gangs or police officers or just as a weapon, or try to figure out how to safely store our guns, which is another thing that we've taught our parents too, which they will be teaching to the community. So yeah, we are working with the school system, or we have partnerships with the school systems, and we're going to be doing focus groups with the Hartford public school system, to make sure that we can get some information out, and that we have a guide or a direct tie-in with the schools, because they're still a major resource.
Right. Now, are there other programs or services you'd like to see put in place to respond to child safety and wellness?
There are other programs. I mean, always yes. I think it's hard. I think it's hard because sometimes I literally was presenting Regina, who's our principal investigator, and Delmaris, who's our parent advocate. She's been our parent lead that's been helping out with the other parents. And we just started brainstorming all these different organizations or groups that can do stuff. And one of the things that we realized was there's a whole bunch that's already out there. We were talking about, I was presenting this idea of providing a safe place for kids to go to express and deal with their emotions, to learn how to defuse a situation, to learn how to make sure they can address their emotions in ways that are not going to be hurtful or negatively impact their family or their other community members. And she literally gave me 3 different organizations that help do that. And I was like, wow, never knew these organizations existed. So it's like, yeah, I want to say, oh, go ahead. So yeah, I want to say, oh, go ahead.
I wanted to ask you, have you developed like a directory that you can pass out to the parents to go to different organizations for different services and things like that?
That's literally one of our goals for our projects. As we're developing this parent guide, that's one of the goals, is to figure out to have this almost hub of where you could find, if you're dealing with the mental issues, right? You have a specific place to go to, or and you know the number, you know the contact person. I think one of the difficulties that we've been coming across is that there's so much turnover. There's so much people that leave organizations, or organizations that are defunded, or just run out of money, that it gets hard because you have to keep up with these all the time. It was so funny because Hartford, I was directed to a page where Hartford had a list of community-based organizations that are available on their website. It was from 2020. And that was at the beginning of COVID. So we don't even know who still exists. We don't know who's still out there. We have to do checkups and calls to make sure that the information is still relevant. So that's one of the hard things, is to figure out, okay, how many organizations are actually still around now? And who's in charge of it, or what's changed, or who's the new staff, or who's the new executive director. So,
do you have any relationship with state agencies that also are involved with mental health or issues dealing with youth?
Yeah, so actually one of the people that we've been working with is DCF, to figure out what statistics do they have, and then the Office of Child Advocate, or the Office of the Child Advocate, the OCA. They actually have been providing us with a lot of data about, honestly, the data that we were originally looking for. They had a lot of those statistics from the last 10 years that show us why kids are dying, at what age are they dying, what are they dying from, how many deaths are accidental deaths, how many drownings were there, how many from car accidents. One of the things that the OCA doesn't show is like injury, which is one of the big things too, is because sometimes we could just focus on who died, which is hard when it comes to prevention, right? Death is just the outcome. There's nothing we can do about the death. But if we talk about the injury, how many people are repeatedly injured? From what? From stab wounds, from gunshots. We actually just had Mr. Woods, Andrew, came in and he gave a presentation to our parents about gun violence. And one of the things that he pointed out was like guns weren't even the main thing. Like knives and other weapons are they're putting kids in the hospital way more than guns are. But we just focus on guns. So yeah, we are working with state agencies, and I think one of the things that is comforting is that it feels like everyone is trying to find a solution. It feels like everyone's working to find it, and everyone's kind of in their lane trying to figure it out. And they're really collaborative, which I've been grateful for. Working with like DCF, from my experience, they're in the place of like, how can we solve this? Which has been very helpful.
Does the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services play a role in your efforts to resolve some of these issues, or at least identify some of these issues?
So not that I know of. I know they were not part of our stakeholder group, from at least from my recollection. They might have been, because this is a 3-year initiative. We're in the 3rd year. I've just joined 5 months ago. But I'm pretty sure I didn't see any of them on our list.
But so that's what you do, and that's some of the things that are affecting our young people in the city of Hartford. Is there anything else you'd like to express regarding that subject matter?
Yeah, it's so funny. The more I dive into this topic, the more it feels like the answer becomes clear to me, and it feels like community is going to be the biggest thing that makes this change. It's so funny. We read this quote by Dr. Martin Luther King, and I don't have it on me, but I wanted to read it. But basically, it's talking about how government agencies, they're not going to be the fix. Like hospitals, churches, they're not going to be the fix. It's going to be the parents. It's going to be the youth. It's going to be the people in the community. That's the people that are going to make the biggest difference. I think when the community stands up together, unified, and say, we won't take this, or we need to make a difference, I feel like that's going to be the thing that makes the largest change. And one of the things that we're talking about with parent power, I think when parents realize that they're the people that are getting serviced, they have way more control than they think they have. If we unify, there's literally nothing that can stop us. We can go to state agencies, we can go to any representative, we go to talk about any policy, and we can make a change if we decide to do it together. And I think the more that we stand together as a community, the more that we're going to solve this issue. So at least that's what I've been seeing.
Are your programs citywide or just predominantly North End?
So it is citywide. It's Hartford-wide. So we're the G14 area, which includes a couple different towns, like I think Bloomfield, Avon. Can't remember the 2 other cities on the top of my head. From my experience, most of the groups and community organizations we've been working with have been in Hartford. And it's been, it's been all over Hartford. I know we've worked with Latino Community Services. I know they're in the North End as well. Right. I think Interval House. Trying to list all the others, but how do I know? Because I literally have driven out to these focus groups to meet with these people. So I know I've been all over Hartford.
Okay, it's a good effort. Well, I think that your job and the work that you're doing is very important in trying to keep the community abreast of child safety and the wellness aspect of our community. Is there anything else you'd like to point out or deal with as we come to a close on this?
No, if I just want to invite people, if there's anyone that wants to meet as a group and talk about these, or do a focus group or do an interview, is there anyone personally that's been affected by child safety issues, please contact me. We do interviews, we do focus groups. We give out $20 gift cards for each activity. So if you want to do a focus group, a survey, and an interview, that's literally $60 in gift cards that we'll give out to people that want to participate. One, because your efforts and your life experience it definitely should be compensated. We can't do it at the level that we want to do, but it should be compensated in some way. But then two, it's going to help someone else. It's going to make a difference in someone else's life. So I want to invite anyone who wants to do it, that we're available and willing to do it.
Do you have any words of wisdom for our guests or participants in the program? That's a segment that we have where we discuss words of wisdom and things that we feel are important.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've been learning dealing in, honestly, in the medical field, in the community or social work field, in the religious field, there's nothing more important than people. Take care of that. That's the number one thing. Take care of your people, take care of your community. And by just caring about each other. If there was words of wisdom, that's what it would be. I think sometimes we give too much value to money, and money can make differences, but a connection could change someone's everything. So if there was words of wisdom, that's what it would be. It's to focus on the connections that you have.
Thank you very much. I'm going to add a couple of words of wisdom that I've discovered. And one of them is, don't be afraid to be wrong. Take the chance, take the risk, believe in yourself and do what you have to do. The other one is to go further than you think you can go. Don't have the fear of the unknown. Just keep moving forward. The other thing is to be good to yourself. Very simple. Just take care of your own self and thrive to do the best you can do. And the last one is to basically have the idea that you can always learn something. You're never too old to learn. Young people have a lot to say. They have a lot of ideas, and we can learn from them as they can learn from us. So it's very important that we keep an eye on our young people and develop them to their fullest potential. And so I'm glad that you're working in the area that you're working and you're doing what you're doing to ensure that we have a basic knowledge of what's going on with our youth, as well as in the domestic arena. Like you said, the intergenerational situation. There are a lot of grandparents raising kids today.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's something that's really important, and a lot of them need help, support. They're dealing with kids who are experiencing different things at a different time. Things that, like when I grew up, were basic, but now you got these, like you say, cyber things, and the internet is very influential. Yeah. And sometimes grandparents don't even get on computers and things of that nature, so they're kind of lost. Yeah. So I think it's important to, like you say, get out that information, provide support, and look at what's going on in these homes.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, and look forward to even following up with some things with you and your efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would love to share the data with anyone who wants to see results. I would love to share with anyone in the community. So absolutely. Thank you for having me. I agree with that, especially I'm Jamaican too. I forgot to mention that. So Jamaican culture, I don't know if you know it, but a lot of grandparents raise a lot of kids.
Yeah, I mean, that's important. And we have some different programs in the city. Like you said, we have a grandparents program run by a community renewal team located on Barbara Street and Clark Street. And it's really dealing with the kids and, like you say, where they're at and the drugs and the exposure to a lot of negative things in the community. And so it's very important to give them support and to identify resources for them.
Yeah, even as you talk about that, think about that concept to have one generation separated. So now you're talking two generations, a grandparent raising another person that skipped one generation and is now in the current generation. Two completely different. That's a completely different thing. So yeah, it's important. Thank you so much for even bringing that up. That's great. So yeah.
Well, you see it in the community. If you're out in the community, you see all these different things that are impacting, our population, and it's really important to recognize what the issues are, and how do we, like you say, come together to resolve or at least support things to make an impact or make a change and improve the quality of life for the people that are living in these communities.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. But on the King's Corner, we have if you want to stay around for a little while, we have various things that we're doing. Each quarter, we're going to recognize a king. What that means is we're going to recognize someone who's doing work such as yourself to really point out that these things are important and that we want to reward them for doing the work that they're doing, recognize them, reward them. So I think at the end of March, we're going to be crowning a king. So anyone you can think of that is deserving, you can nominate them, send that information into King's Corner, and we will basically follow up and develop a list of individuals and crown a king. The other thing is we're going to be having a cook-off. We haven't scheduled a date because of the COVID and the accommodations and things. So stay tuned and work with us, and we'll figure out, it's men basically that's going to be doing the cooking. And we feel good about that to show off their skills and things, because a lot of people think men can't cook.
Yeah.
But in our community, there are a lot of good chefs and a lot of good cooks and things.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. And last thing I would like to say is that on King's Corner, we really try to bring people in to talk about items and topics that are relevant to the community and that can provide information and as well as resources to address some of the everyday problems that people are going through. We know it's hard. Like you say, poverty, income levels are restricted in some cases. People, like I say, working 2 and 3 jobs. They don't have a mom. They have someone that comes in and out of the house.
Yeah.
They don't spend the time or the guidance to really secure that person's emotions, as well as their strength and really desire to move on and be the best that they can be. I mean, without that support and guidance, a lot of our young people fall to the wayside.
Yeah.
And I think what you're doing in identifying resources and working with neighborhood groups and things is very important to keep our people in a positive manner. So thank you very much for what you do. And I hope everyone will continue to come and enjoy King's Corner. At this time, I think we will basically move forward. I want everyone to really tune in to Level Up with Jean. That's a program following this program. It's very important to stay tuned. She has good information that she's providing to the community as well. So thank you guys. Thank you. And we're even a little early tonight. It's been a good program, but I think that we've covered a lot of material. I think a lot of information can be spread or distributed by your organization. Can you once again give out your location within the St. Francis?
Yeah. So I'm specifically the Community Health and Wellbeing Department is located in the same building as the Urban League. So that's 140 Woodland Street. So we're right on Woodland, a little bit to the right of San Francisco. If you keep driving, where the Urban League Center is, that's where I'm at. So, yep. And if anybody wants to reach me, I could. I don't know this podcast, so you wouldn't be able to read it, but it would be Chavon CHAVON .Campbell CAMPBELL at trinityhealthofne.org. So if anybody ever wants to reach out to me asking for more information about what we're doing, I would love to speak to you. So thank you so much, Ralph. I appreciate it.
Thank you for for being a panelist on our show.
Awesome.
And I
All
look
right. Have a
forward
great
to
night.
working with you in the future.
Thank you. You too. All right. Bye.
Well, tonight I'm going to really have a little session that talks about some of the things that I see in the community that we need to talk about, from housing to economic development, as well as, again, the family structure. Hartford received a significant amount of money for COVID, but I don't see the investments taking place within North Hartford. We have a lot of issues in regards to blighted buildings and things of that nature. So in the coming months or coming shows, we're going to talk about the blighted buildings, the development of the Hartford Land Bank, and how it proceeds to distribute properties owned by the city. We're going to look at the economic development issues that are impacting the North End in particular. There's a need for a grocery store. There's a need for various other, what they call comparable services. In other words, basic services that are void in North Hartford. Again, we don't have basic things that we need to provide people the opportunity to stay in their community and shop. Most of the people have to leave Hartford and go to Bloomfield, Windsor, in some cases even Weathersfield or West Hartford, to meet their basic needs and groceries and things of that nature. So we're really going to be discussing things like that as we move forward in programming of King's Corner. And that's something that I feel significant about, because I personally am involved with developing affordable housing. I'm developing 19 units of housing in North Hartford. It's known as Bracket Knowles, the homeownership initiative that takes place on Naugatuck Street. That's off of Clark and in between Earl Street. So if you get a chance, you can drive by and see some of the houses that are being put up. They're affordable housing. All of them have been sold, basically. But with the demand, we look at possibly doing others in the community. And that's something that we're really serious about. And I feel that we will also be available to do some things that are basically important for the community. Like I said, we're going to follow up with the mental health issues, the economic development issues, and other issues that are important to Hartford residents, especially dealing with the basic quality of life within our city. There's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of disinformation going on. But more importantly, there's a void of neighborhood organizations in regards to community development. We need, people that can do things that will change the character of our neighborhoods. Barber Street, different parts of Main Street. One Chain, Sand no longer are around. And so there's a void there that we need to fill in regards to building up our community and making it what it once was. Hartford was basically a thriving community. And now, things are abandoned. Many stores are no longer around. And it's a food desert. It's all kinds of things that really need to be addressed. So we need to work with our community groups and get our city council members and the mayor and different ones on the same page so that we can really start bringing more life to North Hartford, Northeast, Clay Arsenal, Upper Albany. Clay Arsenal is a real situation there. That's a very transient neighborhood because most of the housing is rental. A lot of young people live there. And so there's no stability and there's a lot of blight. So as we move forward, like I said, we will be discussing how do we impact those things that make our community better, makes opportunities for people to live in decent and affordable housing, as well as jobs. We need to, again, prepare people for advanced manufacturing opportunities, medical opportunities, something like phlebitis or phlebitis technician. And what that is the study of blood. Because COVID is rampant, a lot of testing is being done. And I think those positions should be available or made available for people in our community. They're well-paying jobs, and there's a demand for such type of occupations. So I'd like to thank the group to give me an opportunity to express these things. And I look forward to working with everyone in the coming months to really bring King's Korner to the light and bring it to where you can contact us or listen to us as we discuss meaningful, relevant subject topics. So with that said, I'd like to end tonight, if that's okay. Like I said, please stay tuned to Level Up with Gene.